All right, Decentralized Pictures Talent Cast. I am Matt. That is Julian Flores, growth marketer, strategist, and thought leader in the Web3 space. Good to see you again, Julian.
Hey, Matt, great to see you.
Yeah, so I think the last time we talked was at the Film3 Summit in
That's right.
Los Angeles this past fall. So things move so quickly in this space, so it feels like an eternity ago with everything that's happened since then. So before we jump into all the topics, give the audience a little background about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up as a film obsessed child. The thing that got me, and I've told the story a few times, but the thing that got me, just like hooked me and just mainlined entertainment into my bloodstream was Jurassic Park. So it's 1993. I'm 10 years old. I'm in fifth grade. I think I'm the coolest kid ever. And my friends and I go see Jurassic Park. And this movie, I grew up in a small town and we had one big theater, one big screen, like literally one big screen. And watching this movie on the big screen just like changed my whole world. It blew me away, right? To the point where, and kids don't do this now because we have such immediate access to entertainment. But like back in my day, we used to go see movies multiple times, and sometimes we'd leave the movie theater and come right back in. And don't tell the theater, but we wouldn't pay for a ticket, and we just get right back in line, right? So I saw Jurassic Park 5 times in the span of like 3 days. So I have been movie obsessed since then. But where life gets in the way is I actually went on to build a career that had nothing to do with film or the creative arts and everything to do with storytelling in the business setting. So I found that I was an entrepreneur. I was a storyteller through the marketing lens. And so as an entrepreneur and storyteller, I just found myself building companies as a career, right? So my first major venture was a charter school, which kind of feels like out of left field, but it was a purpose-driven charter school for low-income students that my colleagues and I built here in Colorado Springs. Started with fifth graders and grew the school all the way through K through 12, which was an amazing venture. And a lot of that came down to my role as building the culture, the marketing to bring families in and trust their children with us. And I learned a lot of lessons in that in terms of being an entrepreneur. So I took that then into the outdoor segment, built a startup. I've worked in venture-backed startups since then. I've been everything from substitute teacher sometimes at the school all the way to CEO and everything in between. I'd say my kind of sweet spot these days is growth marketing and business development and really kind of being an advisor to companies because I've kind of seen and done it all. So I'm a bit of an everyman. And to tie it back to why I started with the story about how I came to film is through that whole time I've still been obsessed with movies. I have a movie club I do with my 12-year-old son, and I just love movies. And so how did I get to this space? Well, as a marketer, I knew I needed to understand what Web3 was. I knew I needed to understand what the blockchain was. And I had started doing some writing on my own. And as I started to explore writing, IP, blockchain, I immediately found filmmakers talking about, building a better future using these tools. And I red pilled in so hard. Even though I was doing my day job as a marketer, I was obsessed with connecting with and talking to these people who have shaped my life, for literally 25 years, 30 years, shaped my life through film and TV. I was talking to them, having conversations, helping them and helping them build their own projects using my skills. So it's kind of crazy to me that for the last year and a half, I can say, I know some things, you know some things, let's work together in this new space. So that's kind of how I came from being a film obsessed kid to a marketer to combining the two today.
That's awesome. Awesome. Thanks for that background. You just took me back to being a kid, and I remember doing the same thing like with Titanic. Like the
Yeah,
first time I saw it,
totally.
it's like, man, this is like the most amazing film I've ever seen. And then,
Totally.
immediately James Cameron. I mean, of course, I already liked Terminator and some of his other stuff, but like and it was the problem was the film was like 3.5 hours long, so it's just like
Yep.
I was dedicating a lot of my life, sneaking into
Yeah,
multiple showings
totally.
of that film. So,
Totally.
appreciate that. So, as a Web3 community builder, how have you helped projects advance in this emerging space of Film 3?
Yeah, I think, it first started out as just like a convener, right? Like when I first kind of came to the space a little over a year ago, there were so many conversations happening. Jordan Bain from the Film3 Squad really was kind of the central figure. But there were so many people on the periphery. We didn't have the term Film 3 yet. There were so many people asking questions or starting projects. And what I found myself doing is just convening and connecting, right? I became known as the guy who knew every project. I jumped into literally probably 100+ discords, introduced myself, and was just like the guy who knew, wrote some Twitter threads, and just like connected people, right? So like the first kind of role I played was as a connector, because I'm not a filmmaker. So what could I do? I can offer information and value by getting people together. And then I learned how to like start a wallet, and I learned how to buy ETH. And lo and behold, I became addicted to being a collector. I think, some of my first purchases were, Miguel. I heard Miguel Faust talking on one of Jordan's spaces and was just like, this is incredible. And I got up on stage, asked him some questions like, wait a minute, I can talk to a filmmaker, learn about his process or her process, and I can like own a piece of this and be a part of this. And I can jump into Discord and like see behind the scenes. It was mind blowing to me. So I aped in and started buying some of his NFTs. And from there, I just like, once I kind of got the security figured out and how NFTs worked, I just started like collecting everything. So started as a connector, then as a collector. Didn't mean to like rhyme this. I don't think I have a third one. And then realized after about 6 months, I had a lot to offer in terms of like helping people build a business and a brand behind their project, right? Everyone kind of knew that they wanted to tell stories, but as we've said in the space for many times, if you're a filmmaker and you're trying to tell a story, like you also have to be an entrepreneur. You have to build a business. You have to build something, infrastructure around and an engine around this story, and you kind of have to do it all. And since I had done it all in many different, fields before, I started finding myself helping folks get organized, do better planning, learn how to onboard new people and build infrastructure so that we could actually, take these creative minds and give them a bit more structure. So kind of connector first, then a collector, then just like kind of an advisor in terms of being an entrepreneur.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, you and I, we're connecting here because in my line of work and my other day job,
right.
A lot of market development and growth type activities, branding strategies, product principles, things like that to make the company more marketable. So I know that you're a partner with the Film3 Squad. So
right.
How have these skills kind of helped with their model, with their objectives of what they're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I think if you don't know Jordan Bain, this is a person that you need to know and follow. For those of you that do know who she is a masterful leader in the space, and is kind of the OG. So she started more than 2 years ago in Clubhouse, just asking, because she was an OG crypto person, just asking the questions. What does this technology do for filmmakers? And just ran these conversations with 4 other women at first, which is important to note, and then ran these conversations week after week after week, eventually switched over to Twitter and continued to run these conversations, which onboarded so many people, which asked really important questions. But more than anything, it kind of started to establish an ethos. And so she was like the first person that red pilled me in because of her spaces. So I asked enough questions, I kind of participated enough and threw out enough ideas that by about March of last year, I became kind of a presence in the squad spaces. And in fact, kind of halfway through that month last year, after folks had come back from South by Southwest, there was kind of this call to action to like, how do we take this movement forward and organize it and get our arms around it and kind of put some business principles in place. And so that's kind of where I lit up and said, okay, first of all, let's make a founding document. And Jordan and Tasafila, who at the time was building Blockbuster DAO, which is now Rewind, and I just kind of built a Notion document where Tasafila put out Film3 for the first time, and the 3 of us kind of brought that to our kind of informal council of folks thinking about these hard questions. And it took off like wildfire, man. That term and that document, the Twitter groups, the private DM groups that we established from that weekend on was kind of like the next wave of this movement. And I was kind of positioned as the person that was helping organize the principles and the ethos while Jordan was leading with the conversations. And so those conversations she and I got more involved. I kind of became the business half of the brain, where she is the creative and the leadership half of the brain, and the two of us together kind of formed, you know, the newest version of the squad. Fast forward, I kind of floated the idea of let's get together for an IRL conference, and then fast forward to October of last year, and we did the Film3 Summit for the first time. And much credit goes to Jordan and many other people for making that happen. But that's kind of the way I onboarded into the Film3 Squad as kind of a partner and advisor. And we've only grown since then. The audience has grown. The ethos continues to be really strong, and I think Jordan has done an incredible job of planting that flag for the world, really.
Awesome. So I'm going to pull on that thread a little bit. So you talked about the ethos and some of the organizations that are in this space. Obviously, Decentralized Pictures, Bingeable, Film3 Squad. I think there is some commonality there. There is some shared ethos. So what do you think the future of these organizations look like? I mean, are we going to see more and more of these organizations with these shared ethos emerge? Is there going to be partnerships within those organizations, potential mergers, acquisitions? Do you think we might see some attrition? What does the future hold here?
Yeah, I think there's two layers. There is the macro layer of people and organizations that are working at the movement level. So that's Film3 Squad, and then representatives from DCP, from Bingeable, from Beam, from individual projects. And the individuals represent this wider community. And I think that's never going to get, it's only going to grow. It's only going to get stronger, right? Whether individual projects fail. And we've seen some projects come and go, right? Because the space is hard and unproven and the model changes so much. And yet, at the macro level, there's this tight-knit web of people around the world who will always carry this ethos forward. So I'm super bullish on the people at the macro level. In terms of the more kind of like ecosystem level and infrastructure level, yes, I do agree with you. I predict that some of these companies and players are going to continue partnering with each other, like DCP and Bingeable, obviously, and those threads will start to get a little bit thicker. I think what's going to be interesting and a challenge is you see like Amazon just is about to launch their own NFT marketplace that's abstracting away the idea of a wallet. And it's a very kind of like Web 2.5 version, it looks like, of what blockchain can do. I think we're going to see a lot of that come into the space, and we're going to see studios really take advantage of the technology and the culture. So our job as these individual players and at the macro level of a community is to continue to like stay strong, lift each other up, and if any of them take off and do really well, let's say it's Rewind or Beam raises a bunch of money and builds a product that takes off, there's almost a responsibility for those that are successful to continue to lift everyone up behind us. Otherwise, we'll just replicate the same behaviors of the competitive world of Web 2.0. So I think for us, the ethos will remain as long as we lift each other up and continue to share with each other at the table. And that person's success is our success. We say all the time, a rising tide lifts all boats. It's really true in this space. So I'm really bullish on the future of this group and finding more people to kind of add to this group. And we'll see what happens when Hollywood finally decides to really like invest all the time and money into it. Hopefully it's going to be in the people that have been here building this and not newbies who don't really have that ethos.
Incredible insights. Awesome stuff, Julian. Okay, so let's change gears a little bit here. So I think about an event that we attended together, the Film3 Summit. I mean, obviously, I would like to think that 95% of people in that room, while Film3 is still emerging, still growing, things to figure out, everybody was there with probably at least a little bit of understanding of what Film3 is already, and obviously more to learn at that event. So you just attended ETH Denver.
Right. So
tell us about that experience, and I'm sure you had conversations with people about Film3. Mm-hmm. So what was that experience like generally, and then what were those sidebar conversations about Film3 like?
Yeah, I think it was my first time at ETH Denver, and I think it was a very weird out-of-body experience at times for me because, and I should have known this going in, because ultimately this is like, it's a builder conference, and it is designed as like a major week-long hackathon with more conference elements towards the end. So like it truly is like a builder first, engineer focused conference. There's a massive floor there was I don't know 300 vendors all building different layers of infrastructure for Web3, but there was almost no consumer-facing products whatsoever, and there was a distinct lack of PFPs. There was like no Yuga or DeGods type. I mean, there were some individuals that were wearing the hoodies, and some of the folks that spoke on stage were from those communities, but for the most part, this was like an engineer to engineer conference. And for me, it was very weird because when I introduced myself to somebody, what they said, and this is, I've never experienced this anywhere else. They said, "What are you building?" Normally you introduce yourself to somebody and say, "Oh, what do you do? You know, who do you work for?" They say, "What are you building?" Which I thought was a kind of a cool question. But then when I got to say what I'm working on, it was very much like they had that ding of recognition of, "Oh, I love entertainment. I watch TV. I watch film. Like, I get it. Oh, but like, I've never really thought about how entertainment and blockchain can interact and what it can mean. I've never really thought about what this could mean for filmmakers, because as they think about gaming or they think about NFTs, it's primarily been in this kind of last 2 years, leading up to the bull run, and since then of just this conversation around NFTs are, a way to make money. They're a speculative asset, and some people make it rich, some people get rugged, but many of the people I talked to were just engineers who hadn't really thought about the possibilities with entertainment, because I think entertainment is such a monolith owned by so few players. And yes, there are many players, there's lots of streamers, right? But when you think about it, it's all consolidated. They just really hadn't thought about the possibilities. And so I had some really fun conversations with people being like, "Look, man, you can be involved in this and you can help produce a movie, or you can help write lore for a universe, and you can be part of it." And so I just enjoyed that part of it. But for me, again, it was very weird because most of my conversations, when I asked them what they did, it's like, "I have no idea what you're saying to me. I have no idea what this means. And I just had the same conversation with somebody else, and I still don't know what any of you are talking about." So it was pretty interesting.
Amazing. So, I mean, do you think that's an isolated experience, or do you think that's across the board? Like, okay, no kidding, we're on the front end of bringing blockchain, NFTs, everything that's happening within this Web3 space to the entertainment industry. That there's a lot of education that still needs to happen.
I think that's right. I mean, I think you see, the NFT Parises and the Outer Edge / NFT LAs, there's a lot more consumer facing attendees and projects, right? So I think it's a bit closer when you go to those things. You'll see different projects that are spinning up storytelling and conversations about Hollywood. And there are folks from Hollywood who are starting to experiment, all the way from like a William Shatner to, like John Heater. There are names that are big and small that are in this space, right? Obviously, DCP has some very strong ties to some folks that are invested in this future, right? So I think ETH Denver is a bit of an outlier. I think that's an ecosystem engineer focused space, but those people are all going to learn about this so soon, whether as a fan, a supporter, or they're going to help build it. It's just really early for them. And I think I am encouraged thinking about like the NFT NYCs, regardless of how well the conferences run or who gets on stage. There's a lot more focus on end consumers and speaking to end consumers on what the next wave of entertainment could look like and why you should care about gaming and this kind of stuff. So I'd say we're still really early and on the front edge, but there are rooms where these conversations are happening. ETH Denver just wasn't necessarily one of them.
Right on. Okay, excellent. All right, so final question here. I want to talk a little bit about NFT film financing.
Yeah.
So I was on a Twitter space recently, and you spoke on the future of next wave cinema, where we might move beyond NFT sales for financing. And then I also read an article this morning. It was from Decrypt Media, and they were interviewing Miguel Foss. And I know that you know Miguel really well, and I believe you're associate producer as well for Calladita. So, and there was a quote in that article: NFT film financing model out of date. The space moves so rapidly. What's your take on that?
100% agree. I think looking into the crystal ball, and now that this is on record, I'm sure somebody will bring this up in 6 months and say you were so wrong. But here's my prediction. I think when we start thinking about mass adoption and we think about gaming as a gateway into this, or entertainment as a gateway drug, or with Amazon building a new marketplace, I think what you're going to see is the volume of NFT sales may skyrocket, but the value per transaction is going to be tiny compared to what it is today. I think on average, let's pick a number out of the air, you're going to see NFT sales on the order of like 50 cents to like $3 to $5, and they're going to be much more focused on tokenizing an experience, an access point, or a membership. Yes, you will see $200 membership type things, but I think what you're going to see is more consumption-based NFTs. And with the new Ethereum standard that just came out, there's going to be interesting subscription models that you can do through NFTs. So I think as it relates to film financing, what we're going to see is filmmakers, if they want to make a feature film that's a $1 million budget, are going to not have to look to NFTs to finance the whole thing. I don't think it's possible. I don't think it'll ever happen again. I think we have a couple of outliers who've done it. But what we will see is NFTs as a supplementation and an access point to building community. Now, what the community does, the more people you have in your community helping to build, co-create, amplify, and market what you're doing, that reduces the costs that you need post-production, right? You might need $1 million to make the movie, but like, do you need now the next $10 million to market the movie? Probably not, because in this new model, you can build a really powerful consumer base for a relatively low cost and reward them on chain with NFTs, rather than thinking of NFTs as A, an investment, which we can't do obviously, or B, some producer level token where it costs $500 or $1,000 to get your name on screen. So I think that model's outdated. And I think what filmmakers are going to have to do is look to alternate financing sources. There are folks like Bingeable and others that are putting together funds that will greenlight these movies, but they will be from financiers, right? People who are traditional investors putting money into projects, looking for a financial return, but not through NFTs, through an actual investment structure. But the NFTs will be a community layer that will be incredibly important. So, I don't know exactly how that's going to work out, but for anybody who's trying to put something that is expensive out there, and we know films entertainment is expensive to produce, they're going to have to look to alternate financing and kind of create a hybrid model of bringing in the big dollars from financiers and then building community at a transactional level with, smaller cost NFTs and rewarding them from there.
Wow. This space moves fast.
It really does.
And if I had to predict, I bet you'll be spot on with this. Julian, thanks so much for being on the Talent Cast. It was a real treat. I think that you're one of the strong thought leaders in the Web3 space. So can't wait to hear more from you down the road.
Well, I appreciate it, Matt. Thanks for the opportunity. I know people might get tired of hearing my voice, but you asked, so I said, sure. I'm happy to share. I'm happy to share, but thank you.
You keep bringing it, brother. We're loving it.
Thank you.
We can't consume enough. All right, Julian. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks.